I read 5 books in January, and there were some really, really good ones. There's only one that I wasn't crazy about, but the rest of them were fantastic. I don't have any of them? Question mark. I have one. So the first book that I read in January was The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This was my first Adichie novel. I was curious about her because I had watched that one like really famous TED Talk that she has. I think it's called The Danger of a Single Story. I've watched that several times for different classes over the years. And I saw that she had a book, or she has a book coming out mid-year 2025. It's got like a match on the cover, I think. So I was curious about that book, so I thought I would try one of the books she's already got out because she's got quite a long backlist, and it's actually a collection of short stories, which I didn't know when I picked it up. But this was a really great, really, really great collection. Every story, actually, I think there was only one that I was kind of like, I don't get this one. But other than that one, I think there's like 13 of them, and every single one was so, so gripping. So these stories focus around Nigerian characters. Some of them are in Nigeria, some of them are in America, whether they're immigrants, in the process of immigrating, visiting. It just felt very intimate to read it, like the experience of having McDonald's for the first time or going to Key Foods in the city. Let's also talk about her writing. Her writing was incredible. From the first short story, like the first 3 pages maybe, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be good. So, as well as dealing with the immigrant experience, this book talks about feminism, Nigerian politics, interracial relationships, marriage in general. It just covers such a wide range of characters, and every single character felt so distinct. Every story felt like it could have been its own novel, and I would have been happy about it. I would have happily followed that character for another 300 pages. And when it ended, I was always like, that's it. That's it. They're gone. And now we're on to the next thing. Like it never happened. Like it just never felt like enough. She's so good. Highly, highly, highly recommend Adichie if you haven't read her. I am not sure if I will just like go on to one of her other books she's already published or if I'll read the one that's coming out this year next. Don't know, but this will not be my last read from her. Far from it. Alrighty, so the next book that I read in January was Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I have been reading Tess for a long, long time. It took me a year to read this book. I did take a 10-month break in the middle of it. Oh, this is the book that I have, the one book on this list. In this beautiful, oh my goodness, this gorgeous, gorgeous Oxford edition. I was assigned to read this book in high school when I was a senior in AP Literature, and I did not read it. And I kind of have this desire to read all of the books that I was assigned in like high school and college that I skimmed or that I just didn't read at all or didn't like or don't remember from those times. I'm reading a lot of those books now. Like I skimmed Brave New World for a college course and then I reread it last year and I ended up liking it a lot more on the reread. Same thing happened with Tess. I hardly read this at all in high school and then now upon the reread, I loved it. I loved it. Oh my goodness, it was so beautiful. It took me a little while to get into this, which I'm noticing is a pattern for me with classics, is that the first like 100 pages are going to be a slog. It's going to be a struggle. I have to get used to the author's writing style, get used to the language of whatever time period we're in. And then after that, like 100 pages, I was through it. That's what happened with Tess. Tess is about a girl named Tess who is in, oh God, where are they? Are they in Ireland or they're in England? How do I not know this? Her family is poor, so she goes to live with a rich relation that they discover that they have, and things go terribly wrong. And we're just following her life, the consequences of all the things that happen. This is a heartbreaking book, but it's also really beautiful at times. The mid section of this book was just pure joy. There's a significant portion of this book spent on a dairy farm, which is why we have this cute little cow on the cover. And those sections were just so beautiful. There's also a mini series for Tess that is really, really great. It has Newt Scamander in it, the guy who plays Newt in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Eddie Redmayne. I don't think I can manage another Thomas Hardy tragedy anytime soon. Maybe in several years from now. But I am very excited to read some of his happier books. I've heard that Woodlanders is like all of the beautiful parts in Tess, minus all of the terrible, horrible struggles that she goes through. So I'm very interested to read that, as well as Far from the Madding Crowd. I hear that one's also not supposed to be quite as sad. After that, I was reading this simultaneously because I'm always reading several books at once, but I was listening to the audiobook of The Other Merlin by Robin Schneider, maybe? Maybe that's her name? I don't know. I didn't love this book. It was very promising in the beginning. This is an Arthurian retelling YA romance, but it's not really focused on the romance. Yeah, I shouldn't call it a romance. It's more of just like a YA kind of fantasy book with a romance subplot. This is about the daughter of Merlin. She impersonates her twin brother so that she can go to the royal court and be an apprentice, a magical apprentice to King Arthur before he is king. So he's Prince Arthur at this time. I loved that premise. I have never read any sort of Arthurian books, retellings, none of it, but I love a good medieval setting with some magic, some fantasy. And the very first few chapters were fantastic. It was so like quick, witty banter. The setting was really cool. And slowly the book just lost me. I think this book could have been cut to like 150 pages and been way better for it. It had some really good elements in there. It's just there were so many side plots going on that didn't really like go anywhere. This is the first book in a trilogy, so some of those side plots probably have some significance in the other two books, but I'm not going to read them. I also felt like the characters were kind of flat. Some of them were pretty good, but I don't know, there was just a lot of characters. There was a lot of people there, and like the side characters suffered from that like very two-dimensional, like this guy's just mean to be mean and whatever sort of thing that I feel like you can kind of get away with in YA if it is like a teenager reading it. But for me, at this point in my life, I'm like, I can't deal anymore. So wasn't my favorite this month. Then we go on to another YA book, which it's funny. I'm gonna eat my words now. I loved this book. This was Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This book was fantastic. It was just fantastic. And it doesn't read so YA. Like it does and it doesn't. This book is a romance. It is set in the real world. It's set in Ireland in like 2004-ish, like early 2000s. Which is such a fun vibe for this book. I haven't read many books that are set at that time, and I like it. I like it a lot. So we get dual POV, and it's about a girl named Shannon and a boy named Johnny. They go to school together. Shannon has been really severely bullied and has switched schools a lot. She has a lot of family issues at home. So she switches schools to escape some of the bullying, and now she goes to a school called Tommen. The series is called The Boys of Tommen series. So she switches to Tommen, and Johnny is the captain of the rugby team at Tommen, and he is like really hyper focused on rugby. He's like a national star, really ahead of the game for his age. So they just live really different lives, and one day their paths cross and we're following their romance. This is such a fantastic, slowest of burns romance. Probably the slowest burn I've ever read, and it's fantastic. There's actually two books just following their romance out of the series. So the first one, Binding 13, and the second one is Keeping 13, which I am currently reading, which is just as good as the first one. So this reads YA and the things that they deal with, sort of. Some of the issues are like very difficult issues. So not totally like they have like the typical high school issues of just like bullies at school, kids being mean, teachers being whatever, you know? But then there's also very dark, deeper issues. And I just have such a sweet spot in my heart for this book. It's arguably not fantastic writing. It's just like, I don't know, it leans into it. It feels very Wattpad-y, but it's not like afraid of that. It's not really trying to be anything other than that, and I appreciate it. It is just great entertainment. So many swoon-worthy moments. There are plenty of issues that I can talk about in this book, but I honestly don't want to talk about them because it just is so outshined by all the things that I love about it, and it brought me so much joy. The final book I read in January was Second Place by Rachel Cusk. This is my first book by Rachel Cusk, and it was also fantastic. I had so many good reads this month. It was so good. This is a literary fiction novel. It kind of reads like a fable sometimes, and I liked the premise of it. It said it was about a woman who invites a painter to stay with her and her family for a summer in hopes that he will paint her. And I just liked how that sounded. So I put it on, and the beginning chapter was just phenomenal, amazing writing. I think the first line was something like, "Let me tell you about the time I saw the devil on a train in Paris." Something along those lines. And I was like, oh, okay. And now I'm very obsessed with Rachel Cusk. I've watched a bunch of her interviews online. She's such an interesting person. She writes about such interesting topics. The plot of this book, not a lot really happens. It's definitely more of like musings about life sort of books. Like I said, it's kind of told in a fable way. There's a lot of introspection, and I just love the way that she sees the world and the things that she thinks about. Like, she talks a lot about freedom and what it means to be free. Like, as a mother, as a wife, as a woman in general, how does that limit the freedoms that you have? It talks about purpose, not knowing what you want to do with your life, or feeling like you didn't do enough in your life at this character's age. I think she's like in her 50s and she's retired, so maybe a little bit older. I actually have a little quote that I put in my favorite quotes section for the month, so let's see what that one was. This quote is about our main character looking at one of the paintings that this artist that she's kind of obsessed with, infatuated with, one of the worst that he has. She's looking at it, and it's a painting of his lover, and this is how she's seeing it. I admit a kind of silent, bitter weeping did come from my heart at this record of passion, which seemed to define everything I hadn't known in my life, and I wondered if I ever would. Sometimes she seems to love him, at others merely to be tolerating him, but his desire, when it comes, extinguishes her. Rachel Cusk, my feelings about her are kind of similar to my feelings about Adichie, even though they're really different writers. They have super different writing styles, but they have that similar quality of like just cutting through to the heart of something. In her interviews, Cusk talks a lot about truth and about how she writes to find truth, to share truth, and that's the only important thing. And by truth, she means these things that the reader already knows in their subconscious, and her job as a writer is to make those subconscious thoughts conscious and have your reader look at something and say, oh, that's what that feeling was all along. And I like, that's the reason I read books. And she does it so frequently. It's like every single page she has a line like that where it's just like something that significantly moves me. God, I want to find more quotes for you because I don't feel like I'm even giving her justice right now. Why do we live so painfully in our fictions? Why do we suffer so from the things we ourselves have invented? Do you understand it, Jeffers? I have wanted to be free my whole life, and I haven't managed to liberate my smallest toe. I believe Tony is free, and his freedom doesn't look like much. He gets on his blue tractor to mow the tall grass that has to be cut back for spring, and I watch him calmly, going up and down in his big floppy hat under the sky, back and forth in the noise of the engine. All around him, the cherry trees are welling up, the little nubs on their branches straining to burst into blossom for him, and the skylark shoots into the sky as he passes and hangs there singing and twirling like an acrobat. Meanwhile, I just sit staring straight in front of me with nothing to do. That's all I've managed as far as freedom is concerned, to get rid of the people and the things I don't like. After that, there isn't all that much left. I had remained a devourer while yearning to become a creator, and I saw that I had summoned El across the continents intuitively, believing that he could perform the transformative function for me, could release me into creative action. Well, he had obeyed, and apparently nothing significant had come of it, beyond the momentary flashes of insight between us that had been interspersed by so many hours of frustration and blankness and pain. There's so many more, and I want to read her entire backlist as well. Those are all of the books that I read in January. It was a really great reading month. I know I had the one flop, but with just how fantastic the other 4 books were, it I don't mind. It's okay. They can't all be hits. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.